Hi, this is Jen from the kitchen, and today we're going to be looking at making a very simple ferment so that you can have some sauerkraut in your mix. And I thought first we'd look at a few things. This is a great book by Sanzar Katz. Awesome fermenting information and information about why bacteria are so important in your gut and just how lovely they are. You will fall in love with bacteria reading this book. And then Nourishing Traditions. My favorite recipe, ferment recipe in here is the beet kvass recipe. Near the end of the book, it is delicious and so refreshing. So today what we'll be making is, like I said, about the simplest ferment I know how to make, and that is just a red cabbage ferment that uses red cabbage, salt, and water. You want to be using water that is filtered, that filters out chlorine, and if you have fluoridated water, you would want to filter out fluoridated water, the fluoride as well. And so what we use for this recipe is you can do ratios, so you can make any size batch. And the red cabbage, I use 1 head of cabbage. This one's kind of small. Sometimes they're much larger. But for this, I might use just a little less than a tablespoon of salt. If it's a big head, I use a tablespoon of salt for each head of lettuce. And then at the end, I will top off the ferment to make sure it's all covered. Some people are patient enough to pound down the ferment enough that the ferment's own juices cover it. I'm not that patient, or I get distracted with one of my 2 little ones. And so I will use a ratio of 1 cup to 1 teaspoon of salt. Mix that kind of salt water to cover the ferment so that it's all the way covered so the anaerobic process can occur. A few other quick recipes. Another great one that's super simple is 1 head of green cabbage to 1 or 2 bunches of green onions to a tablespoon of salt. That's a great yummy recipe that makes kind of a green cabbage ferment. So, but we'll be doing the simplest of all today. A few supplies that you might need if you don't want to invest yet in a fermenting crock, though I highly suggest them if you get into this at all. You will save a ton of money from buying quality ferment at the store if you do your own fermenting, though there are some really good ones out there. You can take just a small ceramic or glass bowl and fill it most of the way with your chopped up cabbage, salt, and water, and then place a plate on top that is slightly smaller than the diameter, inside diameter here, so that it can sit down on your chopped up cabbage. And then you would want to place a bowl on top of that and fill it with something heavy, either water or rocks. Just place something heavy in the bowl so that the plate on top is pushing down your ferment, pushing down the cabbage underneath the top of the water. And then on top of all of that, you would put a clean cloth to cover it and keep bugs away. So that is the way I started. Then once I got into it, I invested in a German fermenting crock. They're easy to find on Amazon. We have a 5-gallon and a 10-gallon. They are wonderful, and here are kind of their aspects that make them so great. And that is that they have a weight that fits down inside of the fermenting crock. So it breaks apart and fits down in there, and you can press it down in on your ferment. That weights the ferment. And then when you put the lid on, there is a lip around here and a little bubble, a little opening right here. You fill that lip with water, and gases can be released through that little opening. They'll bubble out from the water, but no air can get in. So it's a really nice feature. Makes your ferment super easy. So if you get into it, these are great investments. All right, so we're just going to do a simple cutting up of our cabbage. If it's a nice fresh new cabbage, you can leave the outside leaves on. If maybe it's a little older, you might peel off the outside layers if you need to. And we will just do a rough chopping of this. If you have a food processor, of course, that is the easy way to do it, and go for it. And you'll find out from eating your ferment what size chunks you and your family prefer. We prefer kind of larger chunks, but you can almost shred this. Now with beet kvass, you don't want to shred the beets because it will turn into alcohol. But with these cabbages, this is just fine. And I will do, with a small cabbage, I can probably fit a whole cabbage in my mixing bowl here. With a large cabbage, I'll do half the cabbage in my mixing bowl. And like I said, I just keep it super simple. We like chunks. You can use virtually the whole cabbage. I'll throw that in there. And I just do one head at a time, or like I said, if I have really big heads, I'll do half a head at a time. And add my sea salt. You want good sea salt. And then you want to mix it around a little. You can use your hands, you can use your knife, but you just want to get that salt all evenly mixed in there. And again, a good ratio is a tablespoon of salt to 1 cabbage head. If it's a little smaller, you might use a little less. If it's a little larger, use a tiny bit more. I'm almost ready for my assistant, Ben. And then you place the ferment in here, and you kind of do it in chunks. You want to spread it around. I have my big ferment crock here, because the other thing that we want to do is to mash it down, to tamp it down in. And so, Ben, would you like to come over and help? Okay, so these are the other tools that I use. I started out using a potato masher, but my family gave me feedback and they said, you know, this really isn't that comfortable. And so my aunt sent us a Stone Creek trading company, stonecreektrading.com. This is a wooden tamper and it's made in Poland. And I have fallen in love with it. I highly recommend it, especially if you have a larger crock. This has been our assistant, almost 6 years old. Yes. Ben, would you like to go ahead and do some tamping there? Thank you. Yes, and you just tamp all around. You want to add layers slowly and tamp each time. I'll do probably 2 to 3 layers with each cabbage. If it's a larger one, of course, maybe 3 layers. And you want to tamp each time. That helps squeeze some of its own juices out. Again, if you're really patient, you can come back during the first 24 hours and tamp, and eventually the ferment's own juices should cover it. But like I said, I'm a little impatient, and so I add salt water at the end to cover it because I know that I'm not going to get back to it chasing after these 2 sweet things. So, great job, Ben. All right, so after you've added all the cabbages you want for your batch, however many at those ratios, you would put your weights on and then add 1 teaspoon of salt per cup of water to your water. Pour that over the ferments until the water is above the weights and above all the cabbage. Put your lid on, or your cloth if you're using a simple bowl method, which works great, and leave it for about 2 weeks. And you can taste test it at 2 weeks. We've liked it anywhere from 2 weeks to a little over a month. Makes a great ferment. You can see what crunchiness level and what tanginess level you like, but you want to make sure it doesn't taste just like cabbage with salt on it. That's how you know it's not done yet. And then when it's ready to pull, I like these big glass bowl jars. I like to write gratitude on the bottom. I found that my ferments actually respond well to that word. And I use a slated spoon so that I get some of the juice in, but it's not all juice in here, and you can drink the juice too. It's great. Also, when you're pulling, you'll take your weights out, and then you might scrape the very top layer. If it has a little bit of mold, you'll kind of know if it's alarming mold. If it's black mold, then your ferment's bad, but there can be a little bit of mold on the top that you can scrape off that top layer. Discard that, and the rest of it you can save in your ferment jars. And then the other secret is, when you screw the cap on, you want to make sure that the cap is not super tight, because this will keep fermenting in your fridge. You store these in the fridge, they'll keep for a long time. I put the date on mine usually just so I know which ones to use first. But if you screw this lid super tight, it will keep fermenting and it will crack your jar. So you don't want that to happen, because then you can't eat your ferment. It might have glass in the bottom of it. So just loosely screw on the lid and your family can enjoy ferment for the next week to month or two, depending how quickly you eat it. So thank you to our assistant Ben and Baden, and enjoy your ferment. Let us know if you have any questions.